People will come up to me and they'll say, now, let me ask you about the sleep thing. Okay, that brain life thing, the sleep thing. You go, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll go, okay, look, but just between us, does that really work? I mean, tell me the truth, just between, and I'm like, come on. Do you really think I'm going to go on the air and make up stuff like this? No, okay. So I actually, genuinely, honestly, when I have people on my show, I do vet them early on to make sure that I'm comfortable endorsing them, because I know my listeners take my endorsement seriously. And so that is something that I do care about. And I don't know, you guys remember the first meeting, don't you?
I sure do. We were a little nervous, first of all.
Kim comes to me, and at the time, and she's like, okay, well, there's these people, Brain Life Center, and they're interested in advertising on the show. And it's like, okay, well, let me meet them or whatever. And so we get together and we're sitting around talking. And I didn't know you guys from Adam. I said, like, I don't know anything about this technology. Explain to me how it works, whatever. And so you're explaining it. And I said, look, I need to know this isn't some kind of new age nonsense. It's not that, right? Because I can't promote anything like that. I want to get into energies and auras. And no, nothing like that. So here's the science behind it. Okay. And then I also said, remember these words? Does this sound familiar? Okay, I need to know that this is some kind of a scam, because I'm not going to endorse something like that. Or I use the word scam.
You're pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Well, and so it's like, all right, well, I want to try it myself. All right. Now, what you didn't know at the time, and this really is true, for probably literally about at least 25 years of my life, I've always had severe insomnia. It's been very severe. And so at the time that we met, here was a typical night for me. And I would say just about every single night was like this. I would go to bed and I'd lay there for probably at least 2 or 3 hours before I'd fall asleep. And then once I did fall asleep after 2 or 3 hours, every single night, like clockwork, I'd wake up after 3 hours. And usually it's like, 3, 4 in the morning. And so it's 4 in the morning, I wake up, and then I'm trying to get back to sleep. And so I'd lay there, and sometimes I would like doze in and out, and sometimes it'd just be like, eventually the sun's coming up, and whatever, and it's time to get up. And so that's pretty much what I was having to live off of. And this was day after day, 25 years of my life, and I just kind of got adjusted to it, always being tired. I would say probably about 3 times a year, I would go long stretches of sometimes 3 and 4 days without sleeping at all, where I wouldn't fall asleep after 2 or 3 hours. It's 3 hours, it's 4 hours, it's 5 hours. I get up, I try to do something, I go back to bed. It's 6 hours, it's 7 hours before you know it, the sun comes up, and I come in literally without sleeping a minute. I get through the day, I do the show, I go home that night, don't fall asleep that second night. And now I'm trying to do the show after that. And then, and then I'm calling my producer going, if I have any debates today, you're going to have to reschedule them, because I can't do it. And then by the time the third day, it's like I'm tripping over my words, trying to get through the show. And I go home that night. And if I don't fall asleep that night, I end up calling off the next day. I call my engineer and say, play a rerun, play a best of. I cannot physically function to do my show. But that would and then usually by the next night I'd fall asleep again. I get a few hours of sleep to be okay. But that would happen about maybe every 3-4 months or so. So this was my life, seriously, for 25 years. And so I come here, I go through the sessions, all right? Anyway, I believe it was the 6th or 7th session, I can't remember. But the craziest thing happened to me. I go home, I lay in bed, and I didn't lay there 2 or 3 hours. The next thing I remember, it was morning. And I'm like, are you crazy? And it was like 8.5 hours that I slept that night. I don't know how long it'd been since that happened. I said, this is insane. Okay. And so that has kind of become the new normal. I can tell you honestly, in what's it now, 13 years, 12 and a half, 13 years. Okay. There have been 0 times that I was up all night long and didn't sleep at all. That has not happened to me once, and that would always happen 3 or 4 times a year. Okay, never at all having to go through the entire night, let alone multiple nights. And this has been, this morning I had my alarm. I set my alarm, by the way. Okay, I have to set my alarm now. And this morning I was woken up by my alarm. Okay, so that's what my story is, and it's very true story. It's a very life-changing thing. It is. So I know it works.
No.
All right, very cool.
Okay, so
all right, so you ready to hit me with some stuff?
I am, but I did want to tell you, it's kind of interesting. The reason we thought about advertising with Bob in the first place is we were doing the business for a couple of years, and my own brothers and sisters in Christ were nervous about coming to see us. You know, it's like more people that were not Christian were coming to see us, and I'm like, I want to help our brothers and sisters in Christ. And so it was great to have Bob come with his skepticism and be able to kind of break through that for people so that we could help, our Christian family as well. So it's pretty cool, and we've been able to do that since. So did this help with anything else for you besides your sleep?
Well, it hasn't made me taller, hasn't made me thinner, hasn't made my eyes better. Okay. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's heading me in the wrong direction there. My hairline continues to recede. Okay, so it doesn't do all of that. No, actually, yeah, I would say that it does. I don't know how much of the residual benefits are directly related to the brain optimization technology versus how much of it might be because of the better sleep. Because when you get better sleep, it tends to affect a lot of other areas as well. And I don't know how much of the other areas are because I get better sleep or because of my brain being properly aligned, or maybe a combination of both. But the biggest areas are mental focus and clarity. I do I do have just a better job being able to memorize and access information, and so the mental clarity of thought and such comes in real handy during like debates with people. So
well, I've seen your schedule, so what you do
probably
is amazing.
that's probably the biggest thing for me, is being able to have that. I would argue there's a less irritability. I don't think I'm as cranky. My wife would probably say that's not true, but I don't think I'm as cranky as maybe I used to be sometimes. It's probably connected to getting more sleep, I suppose. So it does have. But I know there's a lot of other things that it tends to help people that are dealing with depression and anxiety and such. I haven't really had issues. Although I should tell you real quick, I've been on a lot of missions trips around the world. And in one of my missions trips, when I went to Kenya, there was this yellow fever medication that they required you to take. The government did. So it's like, okay, so I got to take that. And the particular one that I was taking, it turns out there's like a 25% chance that you can have like psychotic episodes with it or whatever. Well, welcome to the 25%. Okay. So it was like, this was insane. And I was having panic attacks. I never had panic attacks in my life. And I'm like, this doesn't make any logical sense. I have no reason to be panicking. I'm a left brain logical guy. Why in the world am I feeling such panic that I want to jump out a window? Okay. And so that was, I was dealing with that as well off and on. And that was before I came to you guys. And so I probably had that. I'd get panic attacks hit me maybe once a month, once every couple of months for maybe a couple of years. And I did research on it. And they said that once you get these panic attacks, no matter what the source is, your brain is now conditioned to them and you can continue having them and they can perpetuate. It's like, oh man. And I wasn't going to go on medication or any of that kind of stuff. And I never really thought about it, but coincidentally, I never had them after I came here again. And I didn't put two and two together, but it was probably 2 or 3 years later, I was like, no, I haven't had panic attacks. When did they go away? And I kind of was like, you know what? It was about the same time I came here. So I think that had an effect on it.
Well, we've been doing this for 15 years, so it's been thousands of people, and it just happens that there's 4 things that kind of came to the surface that we call our top 4, and it was sleep. It's been number 1. Most people come for sleep, but then anxiety, depression, focus, and concentration. So it's just interesting that anxiety. So there's a good chance it might have been.
It very well. Otherwise, it would just be an incredible coincidence that it just happened. They just happen to go away at the same time that I get my brain optimization stuff done.
We see a lot of coincidences here.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you still have to come in for sessions to keep your sleep good?
I haven't in, I don't know how many years it's been now. I will tell you this. I had to have some tune-up sessions early on, not many. I think I came in for like maybe a couple tune-up sessions a year or something like that. So it wasn't very often. For probably 2 or 3 years, I think I came in for maybe 2 or 3 tune-ups now and then sessions.
And some of those were to check out our technology, because I know you wanted to see.
Right. And I did want to see the advanced
upgrades,
stuff.
Yeah.
But then I talked to a lot of people. It's like they've never needed any tune-ups. Some people need like one here or one there. So in all fairness, you go to a chiropractor fixes you. nobody is so unrealistic as to think I will never, ever, ever need a tune-up again. Okay. Here, you might need them now and then, but you got to ask yourself, weigh that against not being able to sleep or having the other kind of issues. To me, it's very much worth it. But I haven't had a tune-up session in over 10 years. So.
Yeah. When did you know you fell in love with the Lord? Let's just take a little sigh.
Oh, man.
I love it.
Well, I can tell you I was 19 years old when I accepted the Lord. It was an altar call. And as a teenager, I'm not going to tell the whole story here, but as a teenager, I was always a left brain, logical, analytical thinker, that kind of thing. But I was also kind of an agnostic, and I didn't have any room for any of this God or silly religious stuff. And so I was working at a restaurant as a waiter. Well, this girl that I was dating was a waitress at the restaurant. And so the manager of the restaurant invited us to go to church, the head manager of the restaurant. And so she's like, let's go to church. I was like, I don't want to go to church. I can't stand waiting on those church people Sunday afternoon, let alone hang out with them Sunday morning. But she talked me into going to church. So we go to church, the church that my manager invited us to go to. And it was a decent sized church, probably about 400 or 500 people in there. So the pastor's given this fire and brimstone sermon. I mean, he's like, there's a heaven, there's a hell, and you're going to one of them, And I'm sitting there, and I remember the thoughts that were processing in my head at the time. What I was thinking to myself is, there has to be a God, because universes can't make themselves. So there's got to be a God. And if there is a God, common sense says that he would want to, in some way, communicate with his creation and connect with his creation. What if all this Jesus stuff is real? If it is, I'm screwed. That's what I was thinking. Pardon my French, but I was sitting there thinking, I'm screwed if this is true. I'm taking 80 or 90 years of life on this earth and weighing it against eternity. How logical is that? And so, anyway, he gave an altar. Now, at the time, I thought of this as I was intellectually processing it. I look back on it, what I believe was happening was the Holy Spirit was opening my eyes, okay, frankly. But at the time, I understood it as, I'm so smart, I'm logically thinking this through. So he gave an altar call, and he said, if anybody would like to accept Jesus as your Savior, I want you to stand up on your seat. And so I noticed that my girlfriend stood up at exactly the same time. And so we both stand up, and he says, now come down to the front. So everybody, there was probably about 25 of us that all stood up in the church. So we walked. This was old school altar call, by the way. Today, the way they do altar calls is like everybody, every head bowed, every eye closed, nobody looking around. We won't embarrass you. If you want to give your heart to the Lord, jiggle your ear like you're bidding in an auction and you'll be saved. But back then it was like, get up, walk down here. We're going to put the spotlight on you and follow you down. So anyway, so we go walking up to the front, and the pastor leads us through a basic sinner's prayer kind of thing. And so I went ahead, I recited it. And when we finished, I'm first generation Christian in my family. No Christians anywhere, no friends, no family, no nobody that's Christian. And I was a punk. I spent most of my time bar hopping, getting into bar fights. I was pretty much drunk and stoned every weekend. And so anyway, after we finish, I say to my girlfriend, I go, now what are we supposed to do? And she said, well, I don't know, you should probably get a haircut. You don't fit in very well. Like, probably true. So I went out the next day on Monday, and I bought a Bible. Okay, it's the same Bible that I still have right now, beat up and torn and tattered and everything. And by the way, that girlfriend of mine is now my wife of 40 years. Okay, and so we were married in that same church by that same pastor, as a matter of fact, and baptized in the same tank together. Okay, that's right. They got us both in the same tank. Okay, they only needed this much water, but they. But honestly, I will say this, because I know it's like, when did I know that I was in love with the Lord? Early on, I'm not going to kid you, I started having some doubts and some struggles, because I was thinking, how do I know that this is really true? How do I know I didn't just make an emotional decision for some religion of choice in America? Because the Buddhists think they're right, the Hindus think they're right, the Muslims think they're right, Christians think they're right. And I talked with my girlfriend, fiance, wife at the time, early on, and saying, if this isn't true, I'm not going to believe something just because it's not true. I'll change religions if this is false. So that's what really got me into apologetics. I started researching and studying and trying to pick apart Christianity and studying other religions. And the more I scrutinized Christianity, the stronger my faith got. And I started realizing Jesus really is the only truth. He really did rise from the dead. Every other religion is just some false religion made up by some human guy who lived, who died, who stayed dead. And so I started realizing this is actually really true. And so the more I tried to pick apart and dissect Christianity, the stronger my faith became. And really that's what took me down the road to becoming a Christian apologist. So anyway, all right, next question.
All right. Okay. So this might have to be turned over to David, actually. So this person says they came here to correct sleep. They finished their recommended sessions, and they haven't noticed a difference yet. I know this is someone that's pretty recent. I don't know if you'd have the answer to that, but
actually, I kind of do, but I'm going to
Okay.
defer to Dave after this. All right. But one of the things that I can tell you that makes sense to me from a layman's perspective, one of the things that makes sense to me is that I could see some people going through all of the sessions and your brain is now in the process of realigning. Okay. And as it's doing that, it may take some time to fully manifest itself. To me, that doesn't seem that crazy, only because I do see that happen sometimes in other physical things. I mentioned chiropractors before or whatever. There are some things involving the body where, you get your skeleton aligned properly, but your muscles are still used to the old shape of the skeleton. And so your muscles almost have to accept the new formation of those muscles and start adapting to it. And I don't know if that's how it works with neuron transmitters and such in the brain. I don't really know, but it wouldn't be that odd to me if that would be the case. I'd be surprised if somebody went through the whole sessions and then 6 months later, they're still not experiencing anything. That would really surprise me, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was even a few weeks later.
Yeah, so we work in percentages, and we track how many people come through based on personal observation, 1 to 10, and then we look back and we're like, okay, how many people came for sleep? Here's the situation they're facing, and then we track and we see how they're doing after the fact. Well, the mass majority of people, especially in our top 4, they're seeing results between the 10th and the 17th session. Some people, and it's a small minority, they won't start noticing maybe for another 2 weeks. And as we get out, that percentage drops. And we have protocols in place so that we meet with that person and then we implement and recommend some things. So the idea is that as you get farther out, we're trying to get it to 100%, but we've never been 100%. And I don't know anything that is. I know that our percentage of success is the highest I've come across, and I do a lot of research. But when somebody does get to their 17th session, we spend a lot of time with them. We offer a lot of little things to make sure that they're coming back and doing some sessions to hopefully get them that breakthrough.
Right. And if I can add one thing to that as well, the not 100% thing, I think that's an important thing to remember, okay? Because sometimes people have what I think is an unrealistic expectation about any place that they go. No matter what it is you do, if you go in for back surgery, if you go to the dentist, is there 100% guarantee that no, every once in a while you have some anomalous thing where it's like, we don't know why this isn't working right the way that it should. That's going to happen in every single industry. And I don't think it's realistic to think it's not going to happen here. So the possibility exists that it didn't work for you the way it worked for everybody else. And if this were a 50-50 thing, then okay, fine, but it's not. When you have the overwhelming majority of everybody that it works for, every once in a while, there's going to be somebody who's like, it just didn't work for me, and then you got to ask yourself, well, is it worth it to spend the money for something that isn't 100% guarantee? I think it is, okay, because if it was whether there's a 10% chance it'll work, might not be worth it. But if there's a 90+% chance that this is going to work and this is going to help me, you take that chance. We take that chance with everything. You go get your car repaired. We think this is a problem. There's a chance it might not work. Okay, so there's always that chance. But to me, the percentage of success is high enough that I'm very comfortable with it.
And I will say there's the other side of that. We have some people, it's a sizable minority. We don't expect them to get results in 3, 4, 5 sessions, but there's a number of people that do, and we love that. In fact, we meet, as a lot of you know who might have gone through this, we meet at the 10th session, and then we take numbers and measurements because we're trying to determine what's the best protocol for the next set. And it is amazing how many people, but it is a minority, but it's a sizable minority that are doing really well by the 10th session.
You said measurements. Could
Yes.
you elaborate?
Yeah, our primary measurements are personal observation. So when you come in, we ask you to tell us what your primary goals are. Based on your goals, we kind of go a little deeper. I think you may have gone through this, where we're asking key questions so that we can make recommendations based on your specific struggle. And so we also have you give us, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best, how do you rate yourself in this category? And then some of you may know we break it down so that we're really thinking it through, because if it's a sleep issue, if you're struggling with falling asleep, that's a factor that's worth separating out and measuring. But it's based on personal observation, which is psychotropic medications that are passed through the FDA. They do studies. They say, how are you feeling? They ask, they give you the medications. Several weeks later or 3-4 weeks later, they ask you again. And that's how they determine whether it's working for antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, sleep meds, and so forth. So it's personal observation. That's the key.
I'm going to give Bob one more question. I think we've kept you longer than we thought we were going to, as we usually do.
Thank
you. Can't let him go. How long have you been with? And I want to say, if I didn't ask your question, it's because I thought he had already answered it in one of his other questions. How long have you been on WMUZ?
This November 27th will be 24 years. So
Awesome.
I still remember my first show, 27. Well, I was on secular radio for a couple of years before that.
I knew Mark Gilman, who was
Sure.
just before you, and
Sure, I
I
took
can't believe
over
that
for
was 24 years ago.
24 years ago, and then Al Cresta before him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
24 years? It makes
I
me
know.
feel old.
Man, November, I'm starting my 25th year. What in the world?
Wow. Congratulations on
I'm
that.
saying, and we all look exactly the same. Yes,
Of course. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much,
Yes,
Bob. And
thank you very
we
much.
appreciate you, and we
You bet.
appreciate you guys for coming. And those were some good questions. So
All righty.
please have some
You
food. I
got
know
it.
you want.
No, I'm full now. So I'm so